January 5th, 1942. Two German officers stride through the stone corridors of Colditz Castle, the most escape-proof prison in the Third Reich. Guard dogs, searchlights, armed sentries posted on every parapet. A full battalion, one soldier for every two prisoners. Field Marshal Göring himself declared this fortress unbreakable. But something about these two officers is wrong. Their buttons are crude lead castings, poured from stolen plumbing over candle flames. The holster, sliced from linoleum floor tile. The belt, painted cardboard. One careful glance destroys the entire disguise. And right now, a German sergeant sits 10 feet ahead under electric light. One of these men is British Lieutenant Neve. 6 months earlier, he attempted this exact escape. The scenery paint on his cap glowed bright green under the searchlights. The guards didn't shoot. They laughed. Tonight, every single component has been rebuilt from nothing. But here is what nobody expects. The man the Third Reich locked away will one day walk into Nuremberg and force those same commanders to read the charges against their own empire. What drove him to attempt the same suicide mission twice? What did that first catastrophic failure teach him? May 1940, northern France. German panzer divisions have punched clean through the Allied lines. They are pouring toward the English Channel. In the port city of Calais, a thin rearguard of British troops fights to slow the advance. Buying hours for the evacuation at Dunkirk, 26 miles northeast. Lieutenant Neve, 24 years old, fresh from a law degree at Oxford, commands a ragged troop from the 1st Searchlight Regiment Royal Artillery. Men he himself described as an ill-assorted, randomly equipped unit, cut off from their original positions, armed with whatever they could scrounge. He is not a career soldier. He is a lawyer, handed a rifle, and told to hold a port city against tanks. Their mission is not victory. Their mission is to make the Germans bleed for every block, every alley, every bridge between the streets and the harbour, so that 300,000 men can board boats at Dunkirk. Nobody in Calais expects to come home. They are purchasing time with their own lives so the British Army survives to fight another day. Without Calais holding, the evacuation at Dunkirk collapses. Neve understands this. Every man here understands this. They are fighting to make their deaths count for something. The garrison numbers fewer than 400 against 2 full panzer divisions. Artillery barrages hammer the medieval walls of the old town. Tracer rounds carve red lines through the air. Smoke stains the sky a filthy orange above the port. Streets choked with abandoned vehicles, shattered glass, and men who stopped moving hours ago. Neve leads his soldiers across an open square toward the docks, and a shell detonates close. White-hot shrapnel tears through his right thigh. He crumples into burning rubble, drags himself upright, keeps moving on one good leg. His orders are simple. __quote_0___. Around him, men drop and do not rise. The Germans are not slowing. Every minute Neve's rearguard holds is another minute for the boats at Dunkirk. Every man here knows the arithmetic. On May 23, 1940, a German officer finds Neve crawling through wreckage, uniform shredded, legs soaked in blood. The fight for Calais is finished. Neve is hauled to his feet. He is 24 years old, wounded, a prisoner of war. And from this breath forward, he has exactly one objective: undo every part of that last sentence. Transport trucks haul him east into Germany. He passes through Oflag 9A/H near Spangenberg Castle. Months crawl by. Neve spends every one of them studying fences, memorizing sentry rotations, cataloging blind spots. In February 1941, they transfer him to Stalag 20A near Thorn, deep in occupied western Poland. Every new camp gets the same treatment. Neve paces the perimeter like a surveyor. He logs weaknesses the way other men log complaints. Captivity is a sentence he has no intention of serving. April 1941. He and a fellow officer, Norman Forbes, slip out of Thorn under darkness. They head east, toward Soviet-controlled territory. For days they thread through moonless Polish forests, sleeping in ditches, navigating by memory and a stolen compass, eating almost nothing. Then, near a rail junction at Elk, dawn betrays them. Open ground, no ditch deep enough, no tree line close enough. A Gestapo car skids to a halt on the road ahead. 2 officers step out, rifles leveled. Neve raises his hands. Days of frozen forest, ditches for beds, a body running on fumes, all of it erased in 30 seconds of bad light on a country road. That second failure stamps his file permanently. The Germans classify Neve as a persistent escaper, a Deutschfeindlich, a Luftgeist, and they ship him to the one facility engineered to hold men exactly like him. May 1941. His boots hit the cobblestones of Colditz Castle's inner courtyard. The cliff plunges 75 meters to the river below. Sentries salute. Prisoners stare down from barred windows. The walls, 2 meters thick. Every previous escape attempt from this fortress has failed. Colditz has held French generals, Polish colonels, British commando officers, men with every reason and every skill to run. Not one of them has made it home. The system is certain it has him sealed away for good. But how do you cage a man who treats every locked door as a puzzle? Who files every failed attempt under quote, _1__. What happens when the Reich's most dangerous escape artists end up locked inside the same building and start comparing notes? Inside Colditz, the world compresses to stone corridors, barred windows, and that endless drop to the river. Winter air slices through the cells like a surgical blade. Searchlights carve the darkness every few seconds, white stripes dragging across ceilings. Guard dogs strain at chains in the corner yards. Over 500 officers, British, French, Polish, Dutch, Belgian, share cramped sleeping quarters. Hard bunks. Constant surveillance. A full German battalion guards the castle. Roughly 1 soldier for every 2 prisoners. No work details. No labor assignments. No way to stitch purpose into the empty hours. Just stone walls. Head counts 4 times a day. And the knowledge that the cliff beyond the window drops 75 meters to frozen water. The monotony is engineered. Boredom, cold, overcrowding. The Germans wield these as precisely as barbed wire. But they have made a catastrophic miscalculation. By concentrating every escape artist inside one castle, they have accidentally built an academy of defiance. French officers who tunneled out of camps in Bavaria swap intelligence with Polish soldiers who forge documents in Silesia. Dutch prisoners run German accent coaching sessions in their cells. An escape committee. A dozen hard faces crouched beneath blankets, candlelight throwing shadows across a stone, convenes after every roll call. Their job is coordination. One group's breakout cannot compromise another's cover. Escape officers track every scheme in motion. They ration scarce supplies, dye, wire, forge documents, and enforce a strict queue so the castle doesn't erupt into simultaneous chaos. Neve sits among them, intense, quiet. Colditz is engineered to crush these men. Instead, it is welding them into a collective intelligence network more sophisticated than any single escape plan could ever be. Neve's own scheme crystallizes that summer. British prisoners stage theatrical performances in a small hall inside the castle, concerts, plays, variety shows. German officers watch from the front rows. Beneath the theater's wooden stage, Neve and his team have mapped a route. A trapdoor drops into a storeroom. That storeroom connects through a ceiling passage above the guardhouse to the German side of the castle. The entire plan rests on one psychological blind spot. And it nearly succeeds. Sentries scan for prisoners scaling walls, severing wire, burrowing under floors. Nobody watches for officers walking calmly out through the German quarters. On the night of August 28, 1941, Neve pulls on his disguise. A Polish greatcoat dyed field grey, a black officer's cap slathered in scenery paint, a cardboard belt painted silver. He marches toward the guardhouse with two others. A spotlight blazes white. A guard screams, "Halt!" In the flood of the searchlight, the paint on Neve's cap fluoresces. Not dark, not dull. Bright, radioactive green, visible from 30 meters. The guards freeze. Then they burst out laughing. Paul PM, the German security officer, strolls over. He inspects the glowing cap with theatrical amusement, delivers his verdict. Corporal Neve is to be sent to the Russian front. 6 months of planning, every stolen material, every rehearsed step, betrayed by a tin of cheap paint nobody thought to test under a searchlight. Mocking salutes trail Neve down the corridor to solitary confinement. In that cell, silence presses from every wall. The humiliation cuts deeper than any punishment ever could. The concept was sound. Walk out disguised as a German officer. Exploit the one direction sentries never watch. But the execution was amateurish. Cheap paint that fluoresced under strong light. Untested materials. A rushed timeline with zero margin for error. He sits on the narrow bunk, turns the handcuffs on his wrists, makes a cold decision. The strategy survives. Every physical component gets rebuilt from scratch, stress-tested under conditions identical to the real escape, perfected before he risks his life on that same corridor again. If Colditz was designed to break defiance, it chose the wrong prisoner. He has no materials, no outside contact, no guarantee the next attempt won't end exactly the same way. But perfecting a disguise that fools trained soldiers under electric light, that is one problem. Finding a partner who speaks native quality German without a trace of British accent is a different problem entirely. Where inside this stone cage will Neve locate someone skilled enough and reckless enough to walk back through that corridor beside him? And when he does, what will it cost both of them to get it right this time? Winter 1941. Months grind past. Neve watches everything. During meals, he charts guard rotations. At roll calls, he times every sentry's patrol down to the second. He memorizes faces, rank insignia, habits. Which guard reaches for a cigarette at the same corner each night? Which sergeant hangs back near the gate when rain starts falling? Which shift change drifts 3 minutes behind schedule on Sundays? He writes nothing down. One scrap of paper discovered during a search, and it's over. Every observation gets filed straight into memory, cross-referenced against every other observation. A bored guard here, a lazy search there. A shift change that runs like clockwork, except when it doesn't. Each gap becomes ammunition, stored for the moment it matters most. His partner surfaces from the Dutch contingent, Lieutenant Lutain, calm, sharp-eyed, and carrying a skill that money can't buy. He speaks German without a single foreign fingerprint. Not textbook German, not cautious, overly precise German, native German. The kind where no word arrives a beat too late, no consonant lands too soft, no ghost of another language hums beneath the surface. Neve has spent weeks vetting candidates, quiet conversations in shadowed corners of the yard, listening, always listening for that split-second hesitation, the tiny stumble that gets them both shot at the first checkpoint. Lutain has no stumble. Neither has the reckless nerve. Lutain has the flawless tongue. Together, they form a unit designed to exploit the single crack Neve spotted back in August. The blind assumption that no prisoner would simply walk out through the German side of the castle, dressed as one of their own. They gut every trace of the first attempt. Nothing improvised this time. Not one element left to chance. A Dutch overcoat is stripped bare, re-dyed, and tailored to the precise shade of Wehrmacht Feldgrau. Scraps of lead plumbing get pried from the castle walls, melted over smuggled candle stubs, and poured into hand-carved button molds. Neve blows on each cooling button until the weight and sheen match genuine German brass. Linoleum torn from dormitory floors is boiled, shaped, and rubbed until it could pass for a leather holster. A belt gets fashioned from cardboard, painted, buffed, and polished until it gleams like regulation issue. Every single component is tested by candlelight, then tested again under a hoarded electric torch. They work through pitch-black hours past dawn, rebuilding the same disguise that failed them before. Except now, each piece could survive a second look. Consider subscribing if this story holds you. Most viewers watching right now haven't yet, and one tap helps these stories find more people. The disguise was finished. Now they needed a door. The escape route is sharpened too. Beneath a theater stage, they've cut a trapdoor dropping into a storeroom. From that storeroom, a corridor runs directly above the German guardhouse and opens onto the officers' courtyard on the Nazi side of the castle. The plan's boldness is its disguise. Sentries scan for prisoners scaling walls, cutting wire, burrowing under floors. Nobody scans for two German officers strolling casually out the front gate. Beyond the castle walls, a Dutch prisoner captured near the Swiss border town of Singen has delivered critical intelligence. Gestapo checkpoint patterns, crossing points. This man walked the exact roads Neve and Lutain will travel. He knows which railway platforms run permanent identity checks and which ones only search on market days. He knows the 2-kilometer stretch of border wire near Singen where the gap between patrols runs longest. He was caught. But he was caught making a different mistake on a different road. Neve and Lutain commit every detail to memory. Train schedules, border patrol rotations, the names of every town where identity papers get a second look. The date locks into place. January 5, 1942. That evening, British prisoners mount a theatrical performance inside the castle. German officers settle into the front rows. A single drowsy guard watches the gate. Above the stage, hidden in darkness, 4 men wait. Neve and Lutain, joined by 1 British and 1 Dutch officer. Their uniforms are crisp. Forged documents sit folded in breast pockets. Lead buttons catch the barest sliver of light. The final act ends. The curtain drops. Applause swells through the hall. Somewhere below, a guard yawns. 5 months of obsessive preparation now balance on the next 90 seconds. 5 months of memorizing guard rotations, testing button molds by candlelight, drilling German phrases until they slip out without conscious thought. 1 flawed button ends everything. 1 guard who glances a beat too long ends everything. 1 card player who wanders into the hallway for a cigarette at the wrong second ends everything. Because there is a variable Neve cannot control. The trapdoor passes directly above a room where German soldiers play cards deep into the night. If a single one of them drifts into that corridor, 4 men in counterfeit uniforms are standing exactly where no prisoner on earth should be. And even if the disguise holds, what waits beyond the wire? Applause still reverberates through the theater as the final curtain settles. German officers clap politely from the front rows. The last stagehands drift off stage. In the blackness overhead, 4 men crouch around the trapdoor. Nieve pulls the rope. The hatch swings wide. They drop into the storeroom below. A plank groans under the impact, but the sound vanishes beneath applause still rumbling through the floorboards. Light bleeds from the hallway beyond. They flatten against the wall. Listen. Nothing. They push through a metal door and step into the corridor above the guardhouse, the German side of Colditz Castle. Territory where no prisoner has any business breathing. Nieve smooths his feldgrau coat. Lutine adjusts his officer's cap. In a whisper, they exchange the parole word, a phrase lifted from a guard's mouth 3 weeks earlier. Below them, a sergeant hunches over his desk, scrawling reports. 2 officers descend the staircase. The sergeant looks up, nods without interest, returns to his paperwork. They cross to a small door and push into the outer courtyard. Cold air crashes into their lungs. A lone sentry stands beneath a stone archway separating the castle from the outside world. Nieve's pulse hammers against his throat. They carry themselves like officers returning from a late shift, unhurried, shoulders squared, boots striking flagstones in measured, confident rhythm. The sentry's eyes track them. He hesitates. 1 second. 2. Then they pass beneath the arch, through the gate, walking in the one direction no escaper in the history of Colditz has ever gone. Straight out the front door of the German command block. Bitter wind slams their faces. They drop into the dry moat, scramble across, scale the outer wall into Colditz Park. Moonlit trees swallow them whole. They tear off German caps and coats, stuffing them beneath underbrush, revealing civilian clothes layered underneath, worn jackets, shabby hats. The disguise of Westphalian factory workers. Lutine grins in the darkness. They have just walked out of the most secure prison in the Third Reich in under 5 minutes. Now they split up, halving the risk. Nieve boards a freight train at Litznig before the sun cracks the horizon. A German newspaper spread across his lap, props for a performance no one asked to see. A regional line carries him south. Every station platform is a coin toss. A conductor who looks too long, a policeman scanning faces, a checkpoint nobody warned him about. At Ulm, he switches for the Singen connection, the last German town before Switzerland. Outside Singen, he finds Lutine again near a forest road. 2 Hitler Youth boys block the path, rifles dangling from their shoulders. They stop every man who passes. They tell Nieve and Lutine they are searching for 2 escaped prisoners of war reported somewhere in the district. Nieve holds out his forged papers. His hands tremble, on purpose. A nervous factory worker from Cologne. Nothing interesting. Nothing worth a second look. The boys study the documents. One lowers his rifle barrel toward the dirt. The other shrugs, waves them forward. The 2 men they are hunting stand 5 feet away, then walk off unchallenged. Midnight. They reach the border wire. Snow blankets the ground, ghostly under a sliver of moon. They drop to their stomachs and drag themselves through tangled barbed wire in freezing darkness. Coats catching on rusted barbs, fingers numb and clawing uphill toward Swiss soil. The temperature sits well below 0. Every foot of altitude costs them minutes. Nieve's fingers leave blood on frozen metal. Then the ground flattens. A signpost materializes in the gloom. Swiss lettering. They stagger into the village of Ramsen, hearts slamming so violently the sound seems to fill the empty street. A Swiss border guard sits on a bench nearby, cigarette glowing in the cold. Nieve straightens his spine, crosses on shaking legs, and claps the startled man on the shoulder. Broken Swiss German. 84 hours since that trapdoor swung open beneath the theater stage at Colditz Castle. Nieve becomes the first British officer to escape Colditz. A brutal journey follows, through France, over the Pyrenees, via Gibraltar, before he reaches England. He's awarded the Military Cross, but Colditz was never the destination. It was the forge. What do you offer a man who memorized every corridor of an escape-proof castle, then walked straight through it wearing the enemy's uniform? And what happens when the Reich that once caged him finally crumbles, and someone has to step into its wreckage and face the man who built it? Mine recruits Neve immediately. This covert branch runs escape networks across occupied Europe, the Poland line threading through southern France, the Comet line snaking through Belgium and over the Pyrenees into Spain. Neve, codenamed Saturday, now designs the instruments that keep these lifelines breathing. Compasses concealed inside uniform buttons, sealed maps stitched into coat linings, forged documents smuggled into prison camps inside hollowed-out chess pieces. He sketches every corridor of Colditz from memory. Hands that bled on barbed wire now draw floor plans for Mi-9's future operations. He trains downed air crews in evasion, teaching the exact methods that carried him from Saxony to Switzerland. By the war's end, the networks Neve helps operate have guided roughly 7,000 Allied airmen and soldiers out of occupied Europe and back to Britain. The man who once crawled through wire alone now orchestrates freedom at industrial scale. Then comes the reckoning. Nazi Germany collapses in 1945. The victors demand justice. The regime's most powerful leaders sit locked in cells at Nuremberg. The same man who once caged Neve behind 2-meter walls. Neve is chosen to serve the indictments personally, defendant by defendant, cell by cell, face to face. Picture the geometry of that moment, 3 years earlier. These men decided whether Neve ate, whether he slept, whether he froze to death behind barbed wire. Now the former prisoner carries documents that will decide whether they live or hang. Grey dawn light seeps into the prison corridor. Neve holds a stack of heavy packets, formal charges from the International Military Tribunal, each one cataloguing specific atrocities tied to the man waiting behind the cell door. First cell, Hermann Göring, former Reichsmarshal, the second most powerful man in the Third Reich. Göring swings his legs off the cot, reaches for the papers with theatrical disdain. Neve slides the indictment through the grill. Watches. Göring's eyes crawl down the pages. Cell by cell, Neve moves down the row. Rudolf Hess mumbles, incoherent, barely present. Albert Speer's jaw tightens into a hard line. Wilhelm Keitel goes white. In each dim cell, Neve reads the defendant's name in German, places the documents on the table, signs the receipt of service. The man who once begged for scraps of bread behind stone walls now holds the pen that opens the largest war crimes trial in human history. After Nuremberg, Neve steps back into civilian life. He wins the Conservative seat for Abingdon in a 1953 by-election, serves quietly in Parliament for 2 decades. In 1974, he manages Margaret Thatcher's campaign for the Conservative Party leadership. By 1979, he is her Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, positioned to enter the cabinet the moment the Conservative Party wins the coming election. March 30th, 1979, Westminster, London. Neve finishes a day's work at the House of Commons, walks to his car. A magnetic bomb, fixed beneath the chassis by an Irish National Liberation Army operative, detonates as the car climbs the exit ramp. The explosion rips through the vehicle in full view of Parliament. Ari Neve, the man who survived shellfire at Calais, the Gestapo at Elk, the stone corridors of Colditz, dies 100 yards from the House of Commons. Weeks before the election that will sweep Thatcher into Downing Street, he never sees it. The cabinet seat he earned stays empty. That afternoon, Margaret Thatcher stands before cameras. Her voice breaks. She calls Niamh an incalculable loss. The Irish National Liberation Army is subsequently banned across the United Kingdom. His story answers the question it posed at the very beginning. A man stood in a stone corridor wearing a uniform stitched from lead scraps, linoleum and painted cardboard, and walked through the most secure prison in the Third Reich. Because he refused to accept that any wall was final. He failed once, studied that failure with forensic discipline, rebuilt every component, walked the same corridor again. Then he freed thousands. Then he carried indictments into the cells of the men who once imprisoned him. Every locked door, Calais, Thorn, Colditz, Nuremberg, he treated not as a fate to accept, but as a problem to solve. The walls only hold if you believe in them. Niamh never did.